Well, normally when you have the 3:45, 4 o'clock speaking timetable, in my younger days, I would have asked you all stand in place and run in place for 5 or 10 minutes just to kind of get that energy level up. But I'll see if I can do it without it. I was asked to really speak about three things. One, where we were pre-COVID, what transpired during COVID, and obviously what's in store as far as the recovery and long-term prospects for NagaCorp. So let me begin. It was the 10th of February, 2020, and we were in Hong Kong, and we had just announced our year-end results as part of the Hong Kong exchange exercise. For us, it was a very, very good year, our best year ever since 1995 when we commenced operation. In 2019, we generated $1.7 billion in revenue. Our EBITDA figures reached $671 million. Net profit was $521 million. VIP rollings hit highs of $46 billion. We paid out 80% dividend ratio. So we were very pleased and excited that Naga 2, we had increased our footfall to 10,000 to 12,000 customers per day. And we had opened a Naga 2 property in 2017. And it was certainly a key driver, both in terms of mass market and VIP business. China tourism and visitation was on the rise. Actually, it was booming. And we were very optimistic that it would continue to grow. That same day, when we were announcing and celebrating our highly successful results, there was not such good news really spreading across the front pages of newspapers across the globe. The South China Morning Post headline that day reported that the coronavirus that surfaced in China in January 2021 had spread to Europe and North America and likely would cause strain to the global economy and adversely affect trade and cause serious disruption to the global supply chain. Rather prophetic. The paper spoke at that time about 40,614 people being infected and 910 deaths. Little did we know at that point the future told in terms of both infections and loss of life. As we all know, whether it's death or infection, it went into the millions, hundreds of millions. Our own announcement that day, we were probably, like many, we thought that the pandemic would be short-lived, maybe 3, 4, 5 months. I was working in Hong Kong when SARS came about many years ago, and that was a matter of months. No one really knew at that point that coronavirus was only beginning. It did not only carry the wallop of a Joe Frazier, Muhammad Ali fight like back here in 1975, it really carried the wallop of a hurricane and earthquake combined. As 2020 rolled on, we, like others, were forced to close for 3.5 months. We saw a decline in revenue that year to $878 million, still okay, and a net profit to $102 million. But during that year, we saw a dramatic downturn in tourism. We went from 6.6 million visitors in 2019 to a drop of 1.3 million tourists in 2020. For the second half of 2020, there were very few positive signs that the pandemic was going away, and more businesses were closing, whether it was restaurants, bars, service providers, small businesses, be it in Cambodia, but all across the world. Many were closed based on localized public health concerns and government measures, government restrictions being imposed. 2021 was even a tougher year. We were closed for 6.5 months, and we posted a loss during 2021, $147 million loss. And tourism numbers went from that 1.3 million I mentioned in 2020 all the way down to under 200,000. I use figures and numbers only to demonstrate or show to you just the impact of what we've all gone through everywhere in the world, wherever you're situated. Those restrictions obviously not only hit us in tourism, but China obviously was a growing and a considerable market for us. But travel in and out of China became difficult. So that impact was felt not only at NagaWorld, but throughout Asia. During late 20 and 21, we were forced to reduce our staff levels from 8,300 all the way down to 6,100. It was a very difficult time. We carried all our staff for as long as we could. But because of that uncertainty that existed, we had to make some difficult decisions, and we went through a rationalization program and separated about 90-some% of our employees at that point who were subject to that reduction. We exercised very strong financial discipline and cost controls throughout that 2020 and 2021 period. Why? Because we didn't know how long this would go on. I think any company that really leveraged with a lot of debt pre-COVID found themselves in a more and more difficult position as COVID went on. Fortunately, I think we had been fiscally conservative since the beginning of our company, and we were able to manage our way through. During much of 2020, as well as 2021, Naga, like others, we introduced strict policies and procedures for entry and operations. Sanitation continuously of all our facilities daily was a priority, as was testing, mask wearing, social distancing, 50% capacity limitations. When vaccines became available in Cambodia in 2021, really towards the mid-year, we made it a priority to get our employees vaccinated. As a company, we were at the forefront to help the community any way we could to deal with the challenges posed by the virus. Our founder and CEO, Dr. Chen Lip-Kern, personally contributed $15 million to assist the government in purchasing initial supplies of vaccine. Our Kind Hearts program distributed food, masks, sanitizers, testing equipment, and other supplies to local communities with immediate needs to combat COVID. Our focus was not on business development and business opportunities. It was on the COVID and how to end the COVID, how to control it and how to manage it and get back to work. The country of Cambodia itself also stepped up in a big way in terms of leadership. 2020, things were a little bit fuzzy. 2021, they developed their own strategic plan to get things open. There was a resolve not only to get the population vaccinated, but furthermore to reopen the economy. The success of the recovery is very dependent upon that type of strategic thinking and planning to get you back in a position where you can bring back staff, do your core functions. And I credit the government of Cambodia. We were back in business by the last quarter of 2021. The Cambodian government succeeded in getting 90% or more of the population vaccinated, and in the Phnom Penh area, 94%. Cambodia has been ranked with a number of various world organizations as being either number 1 or 2 in terms of effectiveness of getting the population vaccinated. That's for a country that is still in a very much developmental and emerging state. But the leadership had their priorities right. Get the vaccine under control, get the economy open. By the fourth quarter of 2021, the Cambodian government was preparing to lift travel and quarantine restrictions for vaccinated visitors. It was September 14th, that fourth quarter, that we were allowed to reopen. We had been shut down from March through September, and by early 22, the government took another step, lifting travel requirements for COVID testing, reinstituting online visas and visas upon arrival. It was a clear sign at that point that the worst might be over and better days ahead. In January 2022, there were only 57 flights weekly coming into Cambodia. Contrast that to what I was talking about with our announcement back in 2019. We had better than 900 flights coming into Cambodia weekly. Out of those, 415 of those flights originated from China. So you can see that major blow and impact that COVID has on the gaming industry, on the supplier industry, and any type of business that you're in. And you cannot underestimate the magnitude and what it takes for a recovery. The impact of COVID struck at the heart of tourism and impacted China visitation significantly, but we were saved really by a strong domestic localized market, basically Cambodians with passports, a Thai, Chinese, a Korean business community paved the way for the beginning of our recovery, both in the last quarter of 2021 and the first half of 2022. Overseas visitors and junkets that we knew during the pre-COVID period were scarce to none. It was the local business that allowed the company to really remain profitable and survive that period between 2020 and 2022. We were one of really only a handful of companies to report a net profit in that overall period. What we see now continues to be encouraging. Tourism for the first 5 months has exceeded 350,000, and by year end, we expect to reach more than 1 million. Our daily head count, this was the 2019 figures. This is a little bit what I'm talking about in terms of the disruption. I figure you can read this at your leisure. More important, I think, I want to share with you our own personal experience and take a little bit of time later on, and you can see where we're going and what we're heading for. Like I said, it's encouraging both in terms of tourism. We expect 1 million. That's still a small portion of that 6.5 million. They had predicted 7.5 million by 2020, and by 2030, 12.5 million. That's all been kind of pushed back. We were at a head count, I mentioned 10 to 12,000 pre-COVID. We see some very good signs. We've gone from around 3,500 in the fourth quarter of 2021 to we're up to around 5,700, 6,000 daily head count now. But we still got a long way to go in terms of a recovery. The number of inbound flights now have reached 200 some flights. But again, it's going to take a long time for the various individual countries throughout Asia, and particularly the region, to ramp up in terms of airline activity and airline services and lifting fully of the quarantine restrictions. Our first half results for 2022 show that the mass market has experienced a 80.3% recovery versus the 2019 pre-COVID business volumes. The premium mass achieved an overall recovery of 71.8 to pre-COVID levels. GGR first half was 237 million, not bad. But when you contrast it, obviously, with those figures of 1.7 billion I mentioned back in 2019, we've got a way to go. We generated 130 million EBITDA figures for the first 6 months. We generated a 52.7 million profit for the first 6 months. So we see higher volume across all business segments, including a return of overseas junkets from Malaysia. Candidly, I don't expect that we'll see a return of the Macau junkets that were very significant part of our activities in Naga 2. I just think that's the reality of going forward in 2022. So we're focusing on the mass market, we're focusing on the premium mass, and like everybody else, we're going to evolve on what was traditionally known for players from the VIP junkets to whatever new mechanism those high-end players are delivered. Our cash deposits have gone up significantly. Our recovery continues with a good deal of optimism, as I mentioned, because of the tourism wrapping up. And I think, you know, the Phnom Penh community, if I contrast it to the 1.5 million people who lived there in 2010 to a community now about 2.2 million and growing, that mass market will continue to develop within Cambodia and the region. We remain optimistic about the present as well as long-term future of the company. On that first slide, you can go back and take a look. We have a monopoly license till 2045. We have a very competitive tax advantage in line with many of our peers throughout Asia. As I indicated, we had a very successful launch and opening of Naga 2 that gave us a whole different tier of customers and a much broader array of both services and entertainment that has proven very fruitful for a $369 million investment. We expect our Naga 3, which we announced, actually it was back in 2019, tail end of the year, that we were going to build a property that is double the size of Naga 1 and Naga 2. While we had that downturn during the COVID period, we forged ahead in terms of the piling work and the cement work and the concrete reinforcement, and we're pretty much on a timetable. Likely we'll be completing that in 2026. This project's estimated cost is going to be $3.5 billion. 50% of the funding will be generated by the company from internal funds, and 50% coming from our controlling shareholder, Dr. Chenlip Kern. The resort and integrated entertainment center will be 544,801 square meters. As I mentioned, it's double the size of Naga 1 and Naga 2. More than 90% of the new space will be dedicated to non-gaming venues, gardens, amusement parks, food and walking areas. There'll be 3 major hotel chains coming in. We're going to have 3 hotel towers, one reaching 75 floors. It'll be the highest, tallest building in the country in Cambodia, and certainly a highlight from anywhere in the night skies. The hotel towers will be operated, like I said, by internationally known groups. It will be, in our mind, meeting all the entertainment and call it requirements that you need to be competitive within the tourism sector. You know, my own assessment, my own discussions with senior management and executive today is that forget about where we were in 2019. It's a whole new ball game coming out of COVID. The playing field is equal. Now that we're allowed to join in functions like this, you got to get out, you got to go back, and you have to meet people. You have to sell the relative worth of your own property and your own value. That's going to take a lot of hard work. Like I mentioned, the junket business, that's gone into a different phase, a different realm. People will have to adjust to that. But there's a golden opportunity for those who work hard and come up with imaginative ideas, and certainly we're going to be part of that process. We're going to add another 3,500 hotel rooms to our existing 1,600. That's going to take us over 4,000 hotel rooms. We'll have more than 1,300 gaming tables, 4,500 gaming machines between our properties. But most importantly, we're going to add a lot of non-gaming destinations so we can attract a broader audience beyond the gaming sector. I would just close by saying that it's delightful to have an opportunity to speak face-to-face with people, simply because Zoom calls in the virtual world just doesn't get it, as they say. And I think it's a good opportunity to have us here in the Philippines to relaunch our networking and build the next decade of opportunities here in Asia. Thank you very much.